Everyone to today's seminar organized by the SUTD IDC International Design Center on AI and the future of design. It's a series of three seminars. This is the second, where we reflect on AI and its role in design. And today we're very proud to have with us Yariv Adan. He is product lead at Google, and he is currently leading the product team responsible for many of the differentiating intelligence capabilities of the Google Assistant. For the past 14 years, Yariv has been leading various teams at Google. He is, by the way, a computer scientist education. And he worked on various other products than the one I just mentioned. For example, on Google infrastructure, but also on privacy, security. He also did some very interesting work on products specifically designed for emerging markets, for example, in Brazil or India or Latin America in general, Southeast Asia, and a project on YouTube monetization. They're very different topics altogether. He's very passionate about machine learning and about AI. And he also mentors various startups, because in his earlier life, and I think still, he was involved in a variety of startups. He's guest lecturer. And he also, if you go to his LinkedIn site, you will see there some articles, blogs that he wrote. And I picked out two that I found interesting. One is about teaching art to AI, and also a day in the life of a Google manager. So if you want to know what Yariv is normally doing, then it's worth looking into that. So today, Yariv will talk about paradigm shift to more natural user interface and the interaction. What is human interaction with technology, with systems in the age of AI? I would like to just some practical things before I hand over to Yariv. If everyone can keep their mics muted. If you have any questions, please use the chat box for that. And at the end, we will go through that, and hopefully we will have a very interesting discussion at the end. So thanks everyone for coming and joining us. And Yariv, the floor is yours, or the screen is yours, is the better expression. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me just to make sure?
Yeah, we can hear you. And we can.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Thank you for the kind introduction. So yes, I'm very passionate about AI, and I think it's changing the planet and the life of people in many ways. And I think one of the key areas that I'm especially passionate and involved in is it's completely changing how humans and machines interact. And this is basically the topic of my talk. And the way I structured it, I want to provide a little bit of historical background going backwards and putting this paradigm shift in perspective, and I will do it through my own personal story if I can. Then I want to explain what do I mean by natural UI, natural user interface. I would like to illustrate it with real demos. I will use some of the products I built because I just know them better. I think that illustrates what I mean by it. Then I will show another aspect of that, of how computers are starting to use technology that was originally invented for people, and how that is part of that shift. Then I will show a few videos that already show the impact of that on people's life. And finally, I want to have a discussion a little bit what I think is coming next, and especially people that are learning today how to design products, where products are going. I want to give at least my comments, where I think this all goes. So let's really first start with the historical context and background. And again, forgive me for looking at myself, but I think I was kind of born a product manager because I always loved products and technology and how they work together. But ever since I was a child, I was especially fascinated by these big inventions, that were powered by transformative technological revolution that changed everything, you know, the car, the radio, the airplane, the computer. I always try to imagine how easy to be born when in a world that you need to take a ship to cross the Atlantic, and then, you know, at some point you are sitting in business class and do the same thing that took weeks of hazard and uncomfortable journey and doing it in 9 hours while using the Wi-Fi and watching a video. So I felt extremely lucky when about 20 years ago, at the beginning of my own career, I was just in time to one of these revolutions. And that was when the internet happened, not too long after the personal computer happened, right? So through the connected PC, the world that we lived in at the time transformed from a physical world where we used to go to places like libraries, use things like encyclopedias and paper maps, to a digital world where we consume digital information and services from the convenience of our own home. And what was especially amazing was the rate of time and scale of this transformation. Within a very short time, like kind of 2-3 years, this did not take a long time, hundreds of millions of users were connected to hundreds of millions of online services. This did not take long, this was not small, it was really very fast and very big. And what was interesting in retrospective was that the key to enabling such rate and scale of change was the emergence of new platforms, browsers and search engines on the PCs, and data centers and servers in the cloud. These were optimized for scale, and combined, they made this matchmaking between users and websites at an unforeseen scale. And of course, this did not just make our life comfortable and different, but it completely new industries emerged. All industries were disrupted. If you look at what are the biggest companies today, they did not exist before that revolution. And I felt at the time like super lucky, thinking, that's kind of a one in a lifetime revolution that someone gets to live through. But then funny enough, less than 10 years later, another transformation took place, which seemed to be even bigger than the first one, right? And then this 10 years, this is the mobile one, of course, 10 years after the connected PC changed our world forever, the mobile internet happened. And the funny thing, you know, what made this happen was the device changed. And I don't think it made a huge change, right? We had the clunky PC, so it shrunk a little bit so it can fit in your pocket. We cut a few network cables. We managed to do it over the air instead of over the cables, which was a technology that existed, but now we managed to do it at a different scale. And we added also a few not very complicated sensors, you know, GPS, accelerometer, a mic, headphones, and stuff like that. But by doing this, the internet became accessible suddenly to users, countries, and markets where landlines didn't exist. So we actually, that revolution that the PC was hundreds of millions of users, mostly in the US and Western Europe, became billions of people from all around the world, and whole continents experienced the internet mobile first. As noted before, I was lucky enough to work on emerging markets when that happened, when people leapfrogged into using mobile internet for the first time, sometimes as a use of technology. So since the device was no longer stationary, but it followed you wherever the user went, usage exploded. It quickly became the most used device in history, basically 24/7. You know, it feels like an addiction. Moreover, because the new sensors were added, you know, the camera, the mic, the GPS, the gyros, like I mentioned, completely new classes and apps of interactions emerged. All of the things that we take today for granted, selfies, Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Twitter, checking into a location, mobile payments, driving at mobile and walking directions, email and news on the go. All of these things that today, this is what we do all the time, did not exist before that revolution. It did not exist before the early 2000s. And again, this happened at unprecedented speed and scale, powered by these few platforms, right? This time it was the smartphone OS, and the mobile app store on the client, right? It made it very easy for anyone to develop an app and get it into the users, and of course the cellular networks in the back end. And again, combined, they brought the power of mobile apps and websites to billions. And if you think again, what are the most used apps, where are the most used apps, and so forth, it completely changed the life of people across numerous dimensions. And I think that a third transformation is happening now, and it's powered by AI. And I like to call it, and this is kind of my coining, the paradigm shift to natural user interface. And through the power of AI, people can start interacting with machines in the same natural way we interact with each other, communicate in natural language in both directions, augment the conversation by showing and pointing at things like I'm doing now with the deck, rely heavily on implicit context and memory. We don't need to code or do everything explicitly in structured UI, enjoy elements of personality, humor, opinions, character, chit-chat even, and basically we're shifting from a world where humans had to adapt to machines to a world where machines adapt to humans, which I think is a huge revolution. No need to study Windows again or Word or whatever. They are learning to use our own language. And I think that this time the connected device is not just changing, it's not just shrinking, it's not just, cutting some wires and so forth. I think it's disappearing altogether. We're no longer interacting with a physical device in this set, but actually with kind of this ambient AI entity that can be accessed almost from everywhere. Again, in the same natural manner that we communicate with people via multiple channels. You don't think about the channel, whether I'm calling now someone on the phone or chatting with them or doing a visit with them. I'm thinking about the entity at the end, and I think that this is going to be a very big change. And I think it's very interesting to think about, again, in the context of the first two transformations that I discussed, right? So before, the two transformations unlocked mega-scale expansions across 3 dimensions. They made technology accessible to more users. They made technology accessible to allow more usage. And they also introduced new classes of interactions, right? So let's think about how this revolution is going to do it. So in terms of more users, natural language is the most universal interface. Everyone knows how to do it. Everyone knows how to talk. The problem is how to stop talking. Across geographies, cultures, age, socioeconomic groups, even beyond literacy and technical literacy barriers, which today is a huge barrier for people to do more complicated things with technology. It's also the most robust interface, not only that we all know it, but it has an infinite expressive power. If you compare it with any UI today that very quickly gets too complicated or clunky, natural language allows us to naturally utter complex sentences and intent. And this actually levels the field, allowing novice users to consume complex services that are currently available only to super users in the current computing paradigm, if at all. Right? With natural UI, all a user needs to say is to say, I'm hungry. I need a flight to New York City for the Easter. I want to book a hotel for a ski vacation. I need to schedule an appointment for the dentist. I want to cook Italian for 8 people on Friday. I'm bored. The AI understands the intent and then ties it to the relevant service. Right? And again, connecting it to the many providers that are very happy to do it. The other dimension is more usage. We have seen how shifting from a physical world to a connected digital world impacted people's capacity to consume information and services from the home, from the office, and email, and Google, and Amazon started in the first revolution. Then we also saw how that further scaled as we transitioned from the stationary PC to mobile phones. Now imagine that there is natural user interface and the disappearance of the device. Everything is connected, the TV, the watch, the smart appliances, the car, speakers, and everything around is being, you are able to interact. You don't need to take it out of the pocket. You don't need to turn it on. It's listening, of course, with privacy and security and so forth. All right, so in terms that technology becomes ambient all over there, the expectations that the number of interactions and the time you interact will go up. Finally, the thing that excites me most is new classes of interactions, right? So we have seen taking a selfie, checking into a location, sharing stuff on social, pinning stuff. All this came into existence once we took our phone with us in our pockets. And it was very hard to imagine all of these, like it was impossible, I argued, to imagine all of these interactions before that. So, you know, as I imagine now that if we add all of these devices in the world, medical, sport devices, leisure devices, appliances, all these sensors, I think that the cars and so forth, the number of the new types of interaction that we'll see completely explode, and I think it will be a very interesting world. So I've been talking here about, okay, you know, this kind of revolution and whatnot. I would like to make now just a short few minutes demo of a little bit of where we are and how that feels in reality. So now allow me to switch to a demo, and this is really a live demo on my phone, and everything that I do, you can also do. It's all launched. So forgive me if the gods of the demos will fail it. Let me turn on my phone. So I'm going to use the Google Assistant. I think, you know, there are also other assistants that are also very good, but this is just the one I know and built. So the first thing I want to show is, you know, I said how instead of talking queries and going to a search engine and putting stuff in a white box that maybe looks normal for us, but for people that did not grow gradually into that, it's not as normal. We can actually start getting information, which is the most basic thing, using natural language, the same thing we would do with a human. So imagine I come to Singapore and I want to know what to do, right? So I can say, what are some interesting things I can do around Singapore?
Here are some details.
Okay, so, you know, I made it very simple ask, you know, I can see, and it's very interesting that actually, right, like, we understand that while it can talk back to me, sometimes, of course, showing me rich visual information is much better. Okay, so there is Universal Studios in Singapore, so I can, like, you know, what are the opening times of Universal Studios in Singapore?
There are a few locations. Here are their business hours for today.
Okay, so I can watch that and see, okay, I see that it opens in 2 p.m. How far is it from Singapore Airport?
It's 25.1 kilometers to Universal Studios Singapore from Singapore Changi Airport, SIN, by car.
Navigate there.
All right, the best way to get from Singapore Changi.
So what we also have seen is that I asked questions in a very natural way. I did not need to think how a computer would understand it. I used references, right? Like, for example, how far is it? And I managed to get information very easily. And this is okay, this is nice. For people that use search, this is cool, but what's very interesting is that once we launch this interaction and we started looking at the logs, we noticed something very interesting. We are getting billions of queries on search every day for more than 20 years now. But suddenly we found that we're starting to get new queries that we've never seen. All right, so for example, and these are like real queries that people did, that once you do voice and speech, suddenly this come up. How do you spell supercalifragilisticexpialidocious?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious is spelled S-U-P-E-R-C-A-L.
What is the name of the mountain in Iceland that no one can pronounce its name?
Eyjafjallajökull. According to TripSavvy, Eyjafjallajökull is Iceland's famous volcano.
And also, we were hoping to see that people really go to the extreme with this interaction. We were happy. And I think one of the most extreme things that we see in use of natural language is when we're trying to remember a name of an entity, a book you read, a movie, but you can't remember, so you're kind of blah-blahing and from whatever you remember. So for example, What is the movie where a French aristocrat is paralyzed because of an accident and he gets help from a guy, I think from Africa, and they become friends?
Here's a summary from Wikipedia. The Untouchables is a French buddy drama film directed by Olivier Nakache and Eric Toledano.
So I think this query is actually like a miracle. What happened now is I asked the most complex, weird, garbage-filled, confusing query in the world. And I don't think anyone in the world before asked exactly that query. Within about a second, less than a second, these words were sent to a bunch of computers, I'm pretty sure across some ocean, or definitely across some lakes here in Switzerland. And it managed to understand that I'm actually looking for a movie. It actually managed to understand from the collection of words which is the exact movie, and it showed me the exact place from the internet about that movie. I think that that's truly amazing and shows exactly what I was talking, that the ability to consume information is changing and connecting that to the world and to the knowledge. Oh, sorry about the slowdown. Oh, just a second. Entschuldigen. Entschuldigen. Sorry, someone decided this is the perfect time to read. Just a second. So another interesting thing is then we decided that, hey, people are interacting with speech and voice. Maybe we can do things that were never been able to do before on search. Like, what sound does an alligator do?
Here's an alligator. Do you want to hear what a hippopotamus sounds like?
Sure. What does roar like a gorilla?
Here's a gorilla. Hey, would you like to hear the sound of a monkey?
Funny enough, after we did this for educational purposes and so forth, funny enough, we looked at the logs. What was the most asked query after we launched this? And this tells a little bit about the story of humanities, right? We try to educate them. And then really the most asked query was, what does a fart sound like?
This is a fart.
So this is the case, where you actually follow your users. And again, I think it's fun and to see that people interact. So we're seeing that you're using voice. But what was most amazing as we launched that, we started seeing a very different class of what we call personality queries happen as well. And this is amazing because it shows emotional connection between people and machines, right? So we have seen questions like, do you have a boyfriend?
I'm happy to say I feel whole all on my own. Plus, I never have to share dessert.
Who was your first crush?
I'm gonna try not to get crushed. I hope we'll be around forever.
Do you believe in love?
Love is all about a good connection.
And then the two, I found that these next queries are also even, my kids love them, which is like, sing me a happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Compliment me.
You look nice today. You look nice every day.
And these are all queries, we did not sit in a room and think, oh, what users might be actually asking. We actually looked in the logs, and these were the interactions that our users are doing from themselves. And I think that's an amazing difference. You would never think to tell that to a computer, to a machine, but you're seeing that once you are moving to this natural UI, it's not just we're making it easy to do the same thing, but actually this is like the new types of interactions, and the way you think about the machine and the way you interact with it and how it interacts back is very, very different. So answering questions and singing, of course, is all super nice, but we wanted to make it more useful, right? So we wanted to tie it back to the world. So I don't have a self-driving car to demo here, but of course, one of the most important things that a phone can do is take a selfie.
Sure, get ready.
Right, so again, right, like, so if you think again, what's happening here is that the computer understands the world. We've seen it in terms of being able to answer questions. We have seen that the computer understands, okay, people, and when they're asking a little bit about personality, but now we're seeing that it also understands device. And of course, we wanted to connect it more to other areas of AI and capability. And one of the areas that were most successful in the last few years is Translator. So let's try that. Be my Chinese translator.
Sure, let's start.
Excuse me, I have a problem. Can you help me?
打扰一下，我有个问题，你能帮助我吗？
I lost my baggage on the train. What should I do?
我在火车上丢失了行李，他们在做什么？
So this is again, right, like once it can actually speak back and it hears you, suddenly it can enable different use cases in a second that otherwise were impossible for anyone that visited foreign countries even in the last few years, but like definitely before. So we've seen now that it can do this capability. And now we also wanted it to tie it to the world, to understand the user's world, right? So for example, I can ask questions like, how long will it take to get to work by car?
With light traffic, it will take 28 minutes to drive to work.
Remind me when I get home to tell my wife that the demo went great.
All right, I'll remind you when you get home.
So again, right, this is like going back to humans understand. They know where you live, they know where you work, you can refer to it. And this is a broader set of context. And of course, we wanted to connect it even to more things. So you can ask stuff like, can you show me photos with my family in the mountains? Right, so again, understanding, taking the ability to look at photos, to classify them, to understand them, understanding the notion of family, understanding of my family, and very easily I can actually find now in classes of photos. So this is like one side. I want to show a little bit as we were thinking about how it can speak to you back, you can show it stuff and translation. We came up with this idea, which I think is anyone that is living in a foreign country will relate to. Many times you get stuff in the mail that you don't understand and you need to translate.
Take a photo of words you want to understand.
So I have here a newspaper in German, and reading it or translating is a really hassle.
Take
But actually,
words you want to understand.
if the machine can see it, maybe it can translate for me. So I take a picture. I can ask it to translate. But you can even...
Train will. People, couples, and families who have lost their home. The city currently has no bulk accommodations in its own, originally rented.
So basically using this natural UI, it's not just like giving the queries natural, but suddenly, you know, we take it very quickly to find the photos, to translate, and to read out the translation. So it completely changes the way we interact with machine. And I think this is just the beginning of this. So let me get back. So that was the demos. Right, so what we've seen the use of natural language understanding. I did not talk computerish. I talked the way I talk to you and to any other human person. We've seen voice-based interactions. We've seen, you know, what does a fart sound like? How do you spell something? How does the word that you cannot spell goes? We've seen the long movie. We've seen translation. We've seen all these voice-first interaction that wouldn't be able before. We have seen understanding the world, understanding Singapore, understanding opening times, understanding navigations, and so far. We have seen understanding the user and devices, understanding where I live, where I work, the connections between it. We've seen understanding family, understanding photos. We've seen the device and the app integrations. We've seen image and text recognition. We've seen the use of all of that, and we've seen also the use of personality and the emotional connection. So all of these, I think, are like these basic building blocks that are completely changing the way that if you would show it to someone that used the machine 80s, 90s, and the first decade of the 20th of the 2000s, these are very new. I want to talk a little bit about another thing that we've been thinking as we've been thinking about this paradigm. Once the computer can interact with people the same way we interact with each other, we're thinking, what if it can use the tools that we created for humans to use? What would that be able? And specifically, the two tools that we were thinking was the phone and the browser. Because imagine you can't do anything other than using the phone or using your browser. You still have superpower because you can do so much with these things. It's like almost a superpower to do anything. You can call and speak natural language. Of course, you can do a lot of things, and of course, after a browser. So I want to show you two videos. And this one is a computer, actually a machine talking and ordering in a restaurant over the phone. This is Duplex. Some of you may know it.
How can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a woman's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have a 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye. See how may I hear you?
Hi, I'd like to reserve a table for Wednesday the 7th.
For 7 people?
It's for 4 people.
4 people? When? Today?
Next Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Oh, actually, we need to for like after like 5 people. For 4 people, you can come.
How long is the wait usually to be seated?
When, tomorrow or weekday or?
For next Wednesday, the 7th.
Oh, no, it's not too busy. You can come for 4 people, okay?
Oh, I gotcha. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
So what you've just seen on the left was like really AI talking with all the M's and I got you and all of that. I found actually the human to be more confused than the machine. But again, it shows that once you solve that ability to understand and use, that's when suddenly new opportunities open up. Machines are doing phones on your behalf. And we're doing that for booking stuff. This is actually already launched. But what's more fascinating, we can actually, in COVID, we wanted to know whether businesses are open and whether they are delivering and whether there are any restrictions. And it's very hard to do it at scale, but actually once you can use the machine to make the phone calls and ask the questions and parse the answers, we can do it at a whole different scale. Or we have it waiting for you while you're waiting on the line. It's holding the phone for you. Again, opening completely new ways of interacting using technology. And once we do that, we did that on the phone, we said, hi, we achieve a lot of things. Humans achieve a lot of things by using browsers. Can we actually get the machine to use the browser like a self-playing piano or like a robot? So this is this demo.
Duplex was launched with restaurant reservations on the phone, but now we are moving beyond voice and extending Duplex to tasks on the web. We again want to focus on narrow use cases to start. So we are looking at rental car bookings as well as movie ticketing. Today, when you make a new reservation online, you have to navigate a number of pages and steps, filling out information and making selections along the way. I'm sure you're all familiar with this experience. It's time consuming, and if users leave during the workflow, businesses lose out as well. We want to make this experience better for both users and businesses. So let me show you how the assistant can do it better. Say you get a calendar reminder about an upcoming trip, and you want to book a rental car. You can just ask Google, book a national car rental for my next trip. The assistant opens the national website and automatically starts filling out your information on your behalf, including the dates of the trip. You can confirm the details with just a tap. And then the assistant continues to navigate the site. It even selects which car you like. It's acting on your behalf and helping you save time, but you're always in control of the flow. Let's go ahead and add a car seat. And once all the details are in, you can check everything one last time and just tap to finalize the reservation. You'll immediately get a booking confirmation. It's amazing to see the assistant complete a task online on your behalf in a personalized way. It understands the dates of your trip and your car preferences based on trip confirmations in Gmail. I also want to point out that this was not a custom integration. This required no action on part of the business to implement. What you just saw is an early preview of what we are calling Duplex on the web. Duplex was launched with restaurant reservation.
So all of this is very cool, but like, you know, does that really impact people? And I'm a bit short, so I don't know, I will not show you all the videos, but I think this one like kind of a viral video that came out last year. This was when actually one of the people working on our team bought her grandmother, an Italian grandmother that doesn't use a computer, doesn't use technology, bought her one of these devices that she can speak to. And it's amazing to see here how quickly actually she learns and starts interacting, but also the emotional connect. Because I think, again, you know, it's kind of these things you used to see on movies, how people and machine interact, and suddenly it's in reality.
Cuckoo! What is raining today? Water. Yeah.
Oh my God, answer. It said yeah.
You say yeah?
Yeah, it's her.
Oh my God. Is a woman?
Yeah.
I'm glad to meet
What
you.
is this thing?
Hello, Google.
Hey, you're okay.
This is something from the outfits.
You have to say hey, Google, or okay.
Hey, Google. Okay, Google.
What's the weather? Yeah.
What's the weather? Ask.
What the weather? You want to know what is the weather?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
In Flagler Beach tomorrow, there will be showers with a high of 65 and a low of 56.
With this. It's a mystery.
What's it there?
I'm scared. I'm scared. It's a mystery. Oh my gosh. Yo.
Ask Google to play an Italian song.
Cuckoo. Hi, Cuckoo.
You have to say hey or okay.
Hey, okay.
Google.
Tomorrow in London, it'll be sunny with a high of 41 and a low of 30.
It's the temperature in London.
No, I asked her to play your favorite song.
Play your favorite song.
Cuckoo. Cuckoo.
Yeah, you're cuckoo, all right.
Cuckoo. Play a song for me. Piemontesina Bella.
You have to say
Addio dei giorni passati. Cuckoo.
So I think to me this was amazing to see again, right? Like, you know, definitely not high technical literacy, but how quickly it's already getting to play me a song. And I think it's amazing. I have a bunch of other videos here. Maybe I will share afterward because I think we are running a little bit out of time, how it changes the life also for accessibility and being able to understand language for people with ALS. So I will share all of that. I just wanted to say, hey, so you're seeing, hey, this is all changing. We're going into this crazy ambient world with all these screens that will be looking at us and listening. What does this mean for a person that is starting their career on design? So I do think that we will be shifting to a new, I call it, an ambient stack, where at least at the beginning, it will be how do we connect unstructured information, like sensual information, voice, speech, vision, to the top of the stack, where it's still the apps that are being used today. And I think what we as PMs and engineers will need to build is this world and context modeling, user modeling and personalization, interpretation of these sensual interactions into actual intents that a machine can do, proactivity, how to actually learn the user and predict what they want to do and give it to them before they ask, reasoning and learning of the world, of information, planning and automation. So in my opinion, these are some of the building blocks, new building blocks of the new operating system that will drive that. But don't be concerned. There is a lot to be worked on. Actually, I think you're coming to the market in a great time. Language and image understanding is definitely still not where we want it to be. Context, world, and user modeling were the very, very basics. Reasoning almost does not exist. Fulfillment and automation are really starting at the basic action. Personalization isn't really happening at an interesting level. And even users, we didn't solve the mental model, interaction model for people to really understand this kind of ambient machine. So there is a lot of work to be done. And I think especially privacy, security, and trust, for people to trust the machine, to understand them, to do the best service for them. So I think there is a lot yet to be solved and worked on. I think what I've shown you is really the early beginnings. So I want to make sure I leave out time for questions, and I can jump back and forth into the areas that people found most interesting. So this is my formal presentation, and now I will happy shift into questions.
Thank you very much, Yariv, for some fascinating insights. And it seems I need to explore my my mobile phone a bit more, because there are all sorts of options on there that I'm obviously not aware of. I would like to invite people to type in the questions that they have into the chat. And I think from your talk, Yariv, what I like, you started almost like the evolution of development. It's okay, now we know that. What if? And I like that what if, because that is really a way of pushing the boundaries. So, okay, we're now here. What if it could do this? What if it could do that? And I think that is also what, of course, a lot of the researchers, it's a researchy mindset, I think, to keep on pushing the boundary. And I thought that was very interesting to see how you've been doing that. There's a question from Akshika, and she thanks you for the amazing talk. And the question is, in your opinion, how would, oops, sorry, it jumped off my screen. How would infusing AI-backed services to our daily life shape aspects of interactions between agents? So the infusing AI-backed services in our daily life, for example, trust between humans and trust between humans and AI.
Yes, I think there are multiple aspects of that, right? Like, I think, like, trust is also trust that you want the best of my interest, and that you understand me, and that you are capable of doing it in a good way. I think this is like more of a traditional product thing. What I'm actually very excited that is related to this question is when I look back, in the 80s, only crazy people went to gyms and stuff like that. But once you could, or actually the diets, but once you could actually measure some of the things, everyone does it. They're measuring how much they're eating, they're measuring their health, they're measuring their physical activity, they're maybe even walking and so forth. I feel there is a huge opportunity on well-being. I think that once we can actually start measuring how much are we shouting versus talking nicely, how much stressed we are by the way we breathe and we behave, how much are we using positive versus negative words. And this can be, you know, with your teenage son, it could be with your spouse, it could be with your friends, it could be at work. I'm actually super interested in once this ambient thing goes and can actually read our own senses, can it help us actually to improve our well-being and wellness and how we behave within our relationships, right? It can come and say, hey, I think after your kid is playing video games, he's much more aggressive in the way he behaves. Or I think like, you know, hey, you're talking less with your wife, with a certain friend. Hey, you know, you and your boss, you know, you're more negative discussions and positive than it used to be. And I think this is all actually the understanding of context of interactions of humans, of what is of sentiment, of physical activity. This is kind of the sensors, and I think actually it can take us to a better place. And maybe at the moment it sounds a little bit dystopian, a little bit scary, but I think if you do it on device, you don't share anything, and you actually do this personalized model, I do think just like we became a more physically healthy planet because the awareness and the technology became to eat more healthy and do more physical activity, on the emotional and well-being, better sleep, a better relationship, I think that's one area that I'm super passionate. And of course, health is another one, just preventive health, better diet, less stress. So in that sense, I think there's huge opportunity for AI, both understanding the signals, but also giving it to humans in a digestible way, how to recommend. I think it would be cool if machines will teach us to treat each other with more respect and nicer, yeah. So that's like one crazy tangent for that question.
Yeah, maybe the next question from Hayat is links to that, because it doesn't just talk about physical well-being, but mental well-being. So his question or her questions are, with earlier industrial revolution and advancement, human effort is eased with mechanical advantage. Now, with this shift of advancement in AI and Google, is it that we are playing with human ability to take decisions by mental modeling, which can result in other psychological and mental disorder in humans? So can it, rather than the mechanical advantages, you know, help us relieve physical tasks, but would this not make more problems in our psychology or our psyche and our mental well-being?
So I think that any new technology that comes requires new safety or responsibility technology to be developed, right? So when we moved from horses to cars, we needed to think, okay, so how do you manage that traffic in a way that won't get stuck, but also less people get killed and so forth? So I think, like, you know, as we moved from coal energy to nuclear and other energies, you know, there are also considerations. I think we definitely need, and I think I'm very excited to see all this area of responsible AI and fairness and all of that different interpretation, so forth, emerging, because there is definitely a risk for that, and I think we shouldn't dismiss or minimize that risk. I think it's very real. I think we have learned from privacy and security. I think what happened in the internet and computing, privacy and security came kind of after the fact, and it was very hard, and it took 20 years and still taking actually to fix that. I think we understand that unless we design it into the products from early on and think on it, it will not happen, or it will be very hard. And I agree that with AI, it's becoming, and we all are hearing the stories of hiring based on biases and so forth. So yes, I'm very concerned. I think there is a lot of stuff, but I think the top researchers, the top institutions, the top companies understand that they cannot say, hey, this is self-regulation or let the user choose or whatnot. There's a lot of investment. And I think we should invest more. Like I strongly, you know, when we were talking before, you said that, hey, you're already thinking about it in the curriculum. The risk is there and we should address it. So 100% agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it says for the audience here, the next series that we're organizing over the summer, which we hope you will also attend, is on design ethics. Yeah? So in particular to consider these aspects early on rather than sort of, oops, we need to do something. Related to this, another question from WIC. How do you see the machine learning challenge of speech recognition versus sign language recognition? Is there something like sign language recognition?
Yeah, it actually works quite perfectly. I've also seen whisper recognition, so basically that's used actually too. So I actually think that sign language is easier because I think it's actually more structured and there is a, well, in some cases it's easier because it's more structured and more in small scale. I think a lot of the stuff that happened for natural language, there is a lot of training data. I think for sign language, there is a bit less. But I've seen actually machine learning, and it's a shame I couldn't get to show, but a very interesting thing that we trained is not just sign language, but actually people with ALS that cannot pronounce words. The machine actually translates their voice. We trained it to understand it into human voice, and then actually using that human voice, using an assistant, it actually managed to do stuff in the world. So manage a smart home and stuff like that. So there is a lot of work over using this technology for accessibility. So for example, the thing that we showed that the machine does for you stuff on websites, the accessibility team was delighted because it's suddenly standardized all the websites to a single flow that is very easy to fix. You're not depending anymore on website, but if you can put this very structured, automated, wizard-like flow, you can make it more accessible. So definitely, this is extremely more accessible. And this is not just for people with accessibility issues, but people that cannot read, or that cannot see well, or all sorts of dyslexia issues. So the ability to read out, I showed it for translation, but I can do, hey, can you read this English thing for me if I cannot see well or whatever. So I think for people with disabilities, it's a huge saver.
Someone also asked, Rutsika asked, first of all, thank you for the interesting demo and the talk. Is the Google Assistant constantly learning? Can we train it with more data? Or is it learning every day from what we do? Or
so there is always of course privacy and stuff. So yes, it is learning. Just a second, my computer put me out. But like I said, there is different types, right? There is learning, are we allowed to use your speech to improve our speech recognition? This is only people that opt in. We actually use that because we don't want to send the speech as is to the server. We do it all on the client for privacy purposes, but you can donate and then we improve it that way. The other thing that we learn is, like I showed, where we are getting the queries, and the queries that we get, we look at the logs and we see where we're failing. We actually are analyzing, whether we did a good reaction or a bad reaction. We can see it, whether the user stopped us in the middle. Some users are cursing, some users are thanking. We see what the user do afterwards. So yes, it is constantly learning because users are using it in ways that we did not anticipate. I think that the success of Google was always actually using the users, right? Search is the best thing. The strongest signal for search always was, oh, you search for something and then you click the link. Oh, so that after a lot of people click that link, we know that's a good link and we put it up. So Google always invested in looking into what users do and improve the product based on that. So yeah, it constantly evolves and is learning. And of course, we use our own mechanisms to train it. And the web is a giant open source for images and text. So yeah.
Okay. A question from Peter Jan Stapper. Could you address the issue or the examples that you gave in initiative and proactive? All examples that you showed seem to be that AI is reacting to a user initiative. Are there examples where the initiative lies with the AI? Of course, that is easily seen as scary.
So again, I think that all goes on trust and how do you do it. So yes, we have many ways of proactivity. Right, so one proactivity is to let you know, hey, your flight is delayed. Or we can tell you, hey, there is more traffic on the way to work. We learn your home to work patterns. You should leave 20 minutes earlier. Or weather is going to be nice or bad. Oh, hey, you know, we know that your wife's birthday is coming because we have it in the contact information. So maybe you want to consider a present. We're looking at, if you give us access, we are looking at photos. We see, oh, you took a photo of a festival poster. A lot of people take photos of products or posters and stuff. Tickets are now available. Would you like to buy it? Or we've seen that you're making this query around this time sometimes. Do you want to do it now? You know, when we see you that you are in the car, we suggest stuff that is in the car, switch you into certain modes. We kind of predict where the location, so you don't even need to give the address. So actually, there is a lot of when you are in a shop or in a location, if you have a shopping list, we can surface the shopping list. If you are like in the place in supermarket, when you're in the airport, we surface your boarding pass. So there is a lot of, and a lot of it is really, can we anticipate your needs and accelerate it and make it easy? So these are some examples. Of course, it's harder a little bit to demo. Yeah.
Related to the previous question, when we talked about ethics, there is probably a lot that from analyzing what people are doing that you could recommend. Is in the team that works on that topic, is the issue of what should we do or should not do? Where do we draw a boundary in you know, advising or being proactive?
So I think the key principle is transparency and control. So we strongly believe that if it's very clear what are we doing, how we are doing, what information are we using, what are we using it for, and giving you immediate control to say, no, I don't want it, or I want it less, or never like, but making that very easy and very intuitive when you even like, I think that's the core thing. I think that's the most important principle. So really having informed users that are in control, it's their data, it's their experience. I think that's usually the most important principle. Then there is, like, you know, of course, a little bit more nuanced, right? So for stuff that is for family or for kids, or it's so you have these smart displays, these screens that in a shared environment, you know, we're very careful about privacy, not to expose, that people don't have access to your thing, but also, you know, there is a guest mode if we were thinking about this kind of thing. Of course, the assistant doesn't curse, and then the assistant keeps away from religious, sexual, in other areas, and just says, sorry, I don't understand, or sorry, I'm not involved, not to encourage too much digging into it, not to being smart. So I think these are, and we're always thinking about user value and user satisfaction. And I think there is also a lot of awareness of digital well-being to make sure we're not creating just a rabbit hole and then, you know, that's not worth it. And we're really looking at, you know, doing stuff like saving you time or creating quality time, as opposed to just, hey, how do we get you into some feed?
Mary Lou, hi Mary Lou. The question, humans sense their environment and use that to build expectations. Can AI build expectations based on sensing the environment?
Can AI build it? So, what is expected? So the AI senses the environment, and again, like I said, right, like in terms of reasoning and that, you know, we're still very basic. Yes, right. So for example, once you turn off the lights, the AI dims down because it assumes, okay, maybe you want to sleep. And, you know, when you get into a car, we go into a certain mode. Hey, you're not going to type, and we limit it, and we kind of assume what you're going to do. When you put the headphones into the phone, we're actually pulling up your podcast and your music apps and suggesting what you know, if you're in the middle of something. So I think there is we definitely want to understand that's a key part. Context is, I think, is critical for AI and what's happening around, you know, when you pass by. So instead of needing to turn or say this, hey Google, when you pass and you make eye contact with the device lights up if you turned on face recognition. So we're building these, like, you know, early building blocks of awareness. And again, it's all about making sure that it's reliable, that it's trustworthy, that it's privacy preserving, security preserving. So the answer is yes, but early building blocks and responsibility and technology is setting the pace.
Okay, so there's still a lot of research to be done there.
Yes, definitely.
Research.
It's very early stages, yeah.
Yeah. I know there are several different questions, and for reasons of time, I need to jump a little bit through those. So apologies if your question has not been asked. I thought this was an interesting question. It was from Aditya. Do you think this natural language that humans are having with the machines will eventually have the potential to alter how humans really talk today? I think it might be a reference to the way people now write their short messages. You is not Y-O-U, you, or the two, but also LOL, or so could it change the way we talk to each other?
I think it has potential, one, definitely to create new verbs, for sure. I'll give an example that I actually like. So for example, you can actually turn on the polite mode for the assistant, and we see parents doing it for their kids. So for example, it doesn't answer unless you say please, and it waits. If you don't say thank you, it tells you. So this is an example that it's very tiring for a human to do it with a human, but we're actually enabling it using the machine, and we get a lot of responses for parents, and this is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a nice example. There is also, because thus far you've spoken about, the person, the user, and the device. So it's that direct interaction. But we also know that it's always problems when there is interaction in group settings. And Darren wrote that, thanks for the interesting talk. One thing that natural AI has yet to achieve is increase interaction in group settings, either between machines with a group of people or a group of machines. Do you have any examples of where this sort of group settings plays a role, or do you have solutions for that? Or
yes, so one very interesting thing that we have is these smart displays. So it's these things that people usually place in a kitchen or in a living room, and you can interact with voice and with vision. And what we have seen that, we included a bunch of family games, trivia game and stuff like that. And it's a whole new interaction, and we're seeing a lot of, so that's actually interesting because it does use technology, but instead of everyone stuck in their own screen, there is a shared screen and an interaction. We're seeing a little bit of even sessions of planning, like we've seen a session like, people planning birthdays and asking, and you see, because of the voice, different people, can you do this? Is this open? What about that? So you see actually shared searches and what we call as journeys, that's interesting. We launched suggestions in group chat, so this hasn't yet caught up, but that's another interesting. So when people chat, often, they're trying to get together to find a restaurant and so forth. So we actually are looking at how can we bring information into that, so you don't need to go out, take a screenshot and whatnot. And we're seeing that, some of that is taking place. So I think we're seeing early signs, but I think definitely family and family quality time is something very interesting. And now we're also bringing these assistants to TVs that are already in shared spaces and trying to make them more interactive. So I think this is where we will see more of that. But again, right, I think it's the beginning, right? We started with the person and the assistant. Now we're like getting into the commune, going back again to responsibility and reliability, knowing who is around, to make sure we don't have privacy problems, being sensitive to kids and so forth. We're like really taking small steps to make sure we don't make mistakes.
Okay, given the time, I'll limit down to 2 questions that I'll take from the list, if that's okay with you. Vinay mentioned we're heading towards AI inequality. inequality, AI inequality. Some of the best AI tech is available in certain countries and companies. For example, Duplex is not available in Singapore. Given this situation, how do you imagine seamless transition between different AI assistants in the future, as we will not have one Jarvis to do it all?
Yeah, and I think it's good that there will not be one Jarvis to do it all. Yes, definitely AI. I think there is doing it first in English, of course, was whatever, but you'll be surprised, more than half, like much more than half of our queries are from outside the US. So if you look actually, India, Brazil, and India, Brazil, Mexico, Indonesia, the big emerging markets are actually the biggest places because voice is so prominent, actually has huge advantage over there. So we do see it actually in other places. Admittedly, technology gradually gets into markets and smaller markets come last, but I think it will come everywhere. I think eventually what I showed, a little bit quickly at the end, this ambient stack, I think we will shift away from these closed assistants that are full stack to device APIs and cloud APIs for these ambient capabilities that then providers could pick and choose the layer they want and implement on top of it. So I think it will become more of an open API once it matures rather than a closed Jarvis. This is my opinion here.
Okay. It's there was most of the AI agents, so this is Young, most of the AI agents we've seen today work as human assistants. How will human AI interaction change if we treat AI agents as collaborators?
So I'm not a huge fan of the assistant analogy, honestly. Like I think I wish we used another analogy at the time, because I do think also in terms of what we see it's actually much more of a collaborator than an assistant. Yeah, it does some assistant, but actually it plays music, it plays video, you play with it, you chit chat with it, it helps you search. So I think actually the relationship is much more nuanced and rich than like a master and assistant kind of prediction. And I do think we will get the same thing, we've seen with robots, that we attach the moment something speaks like or looks like or moves like an animal or a human being. I think our brains are wired to have an emotional connection and treat it differently. And I do believe that we will get into that we will not think about it at these digital circuits. I think there will be really an emotional connection, and we see it with dolls, right? Kids definitely attach to dolls just because they look like something that is familiar. Definitely, pets is another strong example about that. So I expect the relation to move to that, and like some of the science fiction, the positive robotic science fictions that we've seen, I think that will be the relationship once they are good enough.
Okay, maybe one last question from my side, because a lot of these are these user interface, it's voice control, and it's amazing what can be done. But I don't always want the people around me to know what I want to know. Yeah, because speech is, can you imagine a bus full of people who are chatting with their mobile phone? And that is something that I personally find the difficulty of that sort of voice interface, is that the whole world around you is engaged in what you are doing. Is there any discussion about that? What are sort of developments on that?
Yeah, so one, I think very clearly, we're very well aware of the sensitivity and that and I think this is why voice is still a niche in that sense, because of the social and other limitations. I think there are different things happening. One is this kind of multimodality, and it's also showing its stuff and whatnot. I think the most interesting things that are happening, there's a research happening about kind of whisper or even think. So basically that you don't need to speak out, and it doesn't speak out. You can, either think about the request or whisper the request really without saying it. And then there is a famous demo from MIT and for a few others. So you can still use the power of natural language, but without actually voicing it. I think that, and again, right, reading your mind, that's even more spooky.
Yeah.
But I think that's an interesting, I think what I said before, I think being proactive, just like actually anticipating a lot of these things happening without requesting, I think that's another way to go around it. And I do think that eventually people will feel more, it will become a thing. If you would tell people 20 years ago that when you socially meet, everyone is on their screen and chatting, you wouldn't believe, but it happened. So I think, both ways will come. I think at the end, it's okay, what value are you providing? I think if it's high value, we will manage to find the type of adaptation.
Okay, thanks very much, Yariv, and apologies for all the other people who wrote some questions in the chat. Time is up. We set till 5, 5:15. I think it's still the academic quarter still allows us to go there. So first of all, Yariv, I would like to thank you very, very much for sharing with us your story of how to push the boundaries with your colleagues and your teams at Google. I think there have been some amazing examples that you showed. And also the way you go about it, and the questions and I would say the considerations that are there in the background, looking at people's well-being in particular. So I hope also that in the audience that you have very much enjoyed this talk. So thanks very much. I can clap for other people. So that's in an audience a bit easy. I see some hands going up for clapping. So thank you very, very much again. And if you allow me to just announce the upcoming seminar, that's on the 1st of April, Thursday, that's 10 a.m. because the person is, the other side of the world. That is Min Dao. He's from Autodesk, and he will talk about how AI can benefit from great designs, and not how design can benefit from AI, but how AI can benefit from great design. So I hope that if you're on our mailing list, then you will receive this invitation soon. And we hope to all see you again there. We very much enjoyed the talk, Yariv. So thanks again. And for all of you, a very nice day or evening, wherever you are, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.